We can't get the people on WhatsApp to move on to WeChat. We can't get the people on WeChat to move over to WhatsApp. So we're stuck. There is a firewall between those two services. They are non-integratable. But what if they were? Is there a way or a function by which you can take a message from a sender on WeChat and actually deliver it to a recipient from WhatsApp and vice versa? We do not want to do anything that changes their habits or patterns of behavior, because we believe that we should be going to them rather than asking them to come to us.
Welcome, Saul and Wojtek, to my startup podcast. A pleasure to have you guys on. It's been some time since we first met on the Lower East Side of New York at an underground bar, but you guys had a lot of interesting stuff you're working on then, and you have, as I've seen on LinkedIn since then. So I'm looking forward to learning more about that. But yeah, good to see you guys again.
Thank you for having us on.
And so before we jump into what you're working on, I'd love to hear more about your guys' background. Of course, you're based out of London. What led you guys into the startup space, and what makes you guys who you are? I've seen a lot of very cool stuff you guys are working with, your own community that you're building. So I know that tells you something about you guys' character. But yeah, tell me more about yourselves.
So if I kick off, I think it's fair to say that Saul and I are tied at the hip when it comes to our startup career. So we had met at university back in 2014, 2015. We studied at Oxford together. We were in the same college, and our first project together was actually launching a student society called the Oxford Forum, the purpose of which was to organize panel debates at the university. And we felt at the time that this was a niche that was lacking when it came to how the university and student societies in the university organized debates. So we began by trying to occupy that niche with some success. We managed to organize several significant debates, and the society was, I think, still running up to now, certainly up to COVID, when it was still running panel debates. And our first entrepreneurial and commercial project together was actually a student tutoring company, which we launched pretty much straight out of university. And the purpose of that company was relatively simple and pretty unoriginal, insofar as it was very similar to a lot of other companies that are launched by recent graduates from Oxford and Cambridge, who effectively have one skill set they can sell to other people, which is helping other students get into Oxford and Cambridge. So in our complete lack of originality, we pursued exactly the same path. And we launched a company to help other students apply to Oxford and Cambridge, get into Oxford and Cambridge. And we tapped the network of friends and colleagues we had at the university to do that. And in the meantime, I was doing a master's degree. Saul was doing other things that he can talk about as well. But we spent probably a year and a half, 2 years perfecting the GTM and the exact business model. But the one we had settled on over time was a B2B white label model. So instead of selling our services directly to students or parents, we ended up being a white label party to other companies, particularly in the Far East, who themselves wanted to sell educational consultancy services to their own students. And they were often themselves lacking in the expertise or capacity to be able to deliver those services. So our company, Doxa, would come in and we would effectively supplement and organize those sessions on behalf of the B2B customer and deliver them to the students and the parents without the customer being aware of our presence. So we would be a white label party. And this has allowed us to scale this model across China, where we would be selling those services, not just in China, but predominantly China, where we'd be selling those services to multiple different agencies at the same time. So that was our first project together.
And sorry, so is that a platform that people from the Far East would log into and get advice, like tutoring advice? How did that manifest?
Saul, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. So we started by having a end-to-end platform where people could find tutors, book times with them, log in, and then have sessions happen, all automated, which is where a lot of tutoring companies want to get to. We got there pretty quick, but we realized that actually that's not necessarily what the customer wanted. And actually having a less sort of end-to-end automated approach was more appealing to customers. Actually wheeling back some of the tech was important to meet customer need. And so the way that the platform works nowadays, and I think this is because the nature of the tutoring is, it's not huge mass market, it's kind of premium, more personalized service. So the kind of feeling of automation actually takes away from the experience. Instead now, you can go on the platform and find a tutor that you like and then contact us. But rather than it all being automated, the booking and everything, you reach out to the team, and the team will arrange an introductory call with you, and then they'll arrange a session with a tutor. But perhaps the more interesting thing with Doxa is that actually the business is a B2B white label business. And so a number of our customers actually come through other tutoring agencies, which we work very closely with to help them provide more services to their students or potential students. For example, you might run an agency somewhere else in the world. Let's say it's called like Best Tutors Paris, and you have people coming to you saying, "Hey, I would like to go to Cambridge. How do I do this?" Best Tutors Paris won't know what to do, and so we come in. We say, "Here are all the tutors. Here are all the programs. You can sell them to your customers, but they don't need to know that we exist." And then customers will book through Best Tutors Paris, and they'll use our tutors and programs. And then Best Tutors Paris gets to charge whatever commission they want on top.
Yeah, no, I've seen the white label approach from different startups, and it seems to be a pretty successful way to kind of work your way into a market. You already have your established players, and then this allows them to benefit from your platform that you've built while still marketing their own brand. And I know even with myself, my own dental startup, I use a white label integration to integrate with the dental platforms that the practices use to manage their entire practice, and it lets me use my own brand when the user downloads my software and they go through the third party integration. They see my brand instead of the other, and it makes a big difference to me to be able to have that and seem more professional. So I see how that makes sense.
Brendan, to be clear though, this is not the startup we're currently working on, and in fact,
Yes.
There's another one in between. So Wojtek and I have this is our third project together.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I'd love to get to what you guys are currently working on. So yeah, I know I've seen your guys' story on LinkedIn. You're working on Jely, which I'll let you guys explain more about it, but it sounds like a very interesting application for service providers. I'd love to hear more about what the exact target audience is and what the niche is that you guys are targeting there.
Yeah, sure. I think it's probably quite important as well for the context of Jely to mention that we actually had a different startup before Jely, Wojtek and I, but after the tutoring startup. And it was a social network where we enabled communities to curate interesting content, a little bit like Pinterest and Reddit merged. And we grew it to about 2,000 communities at about 50K monthly active users. And we raised $2 million in total for VC funding, but we couldn't monetize it sufficiently. And we made a series of other mistakes, had other problems, but we had to wind it down about halfway through last year. One of the key lessons from building that startup was don't try and drive people to a new platform when you can integrate into pre-existing spaces where they communicate. And we took that philosophy, thought about our first company as well, and the way that service providers and customers interact with each other, and then devised a solution that kind of took lessons from both experiences. With Wojtek, I can hand over to you to describe what we're doing with Jely now.
Yeah, so maybe just to begin with the initial problem that triggered our interest in this space. So Jely, very broadly, is a message orchestration solution. Now, what on earth does that mean? As the question that everyone asks. So the very basic problem that we had encountered in the first iteration of this, in running a company, again, our tutoring company, out in the Far East, was how do we communicate with the end customer? And within the marketplace-like setting of our company, where we have a student, a parent, and on our side, we have a mentor providing that service, how do we actually facilitate communication between those 2 or 3 parties? Now, there are several different answers to how you can do that, and various different marketplaces will have different answers. So you might have your own app where you effectively integrate a messaging solution into the app, and then everyone is forced to come to your own app to effectively run the sessions and also communicate and message each other. You can ask everyone to come to a third-party solution like Zoom or Teams or another messaging solution where you will put one party in the chat, you will put the other party in the chat, and they can message each other. Again, that works in certain circumstances, but not all of them. Now, the reason it didn't particularly work well in our circumstance is that we had noticed that both on the Chinese side, there was a strong propensity to want to use WeChat for pretty much all bits of communication that was happening between us and the customer, us as a student, us and the parent. And on the mentor side, there was a very strong preference for wanting to use WhatsApp to do exactly the same. And the reason that was the case is because in today's day and age, people are generally mobile first. They will have a preference for using the most convenient tool that they are using for everything else in their life to also use that for work purposes, because again, it's convenient and accessible. So our starting philosophy was, how can we make it seamless for us to communicate with both end users and end customers and our providers using the consumer chat applications they have a preference for? But not only that, how can we facilitate the conversation between the end customer, i.e. the student, and the provider, i.e. the mentor, between each other using the consumer chat applications they have a preference for? Now, we can't get the people on WhatsApp to move on to WeChat. We can't get the people on WeChat to move over to WhatsApp. So we're stuck. There is a firewall between those two services. They are non-integratable. But what if they were? Is there a way or a function by which you can take a message from a sender on WeChat and actually deliver it to a recipient from WhatsApp and vice versa? Can you effectively create a relay system where you can relay messages between one user and the other? So that's really the starting problem of how we got hit. It was that question of an engineering challenge of, is it even feasible and possible technically to take messages from one system and essentially deliver it elsewhere, and it create a seamless interaction between two users on two different platforms?
Yeah, no, that sounds like a fascinating. So yeah, if I understand right, you have all these users that you want to integrate. They're so used to using their own platform, WhatsApp, WeChat, and you want to actually be able to integrate together the WeChat user base with the WhatsApp user base. Is that because are some of the providers using WeChat, and then on the other side, the customers using WhatsApp? Is that the reason what's the motivation to combine WhatsApp and WeChat?
So in our instance, it's normally the other way around, by which the customer would be using WeChat and the provider would be using WhatsApp. But it doesn't really matter what configuration we're working with. The fundamental problem is there are two parties to a marketplace interaction. They both have a strong preference for wanting to continue to use the app that they use every single day, but the other party is unwilling to come to them. So we have a divorce, effectively, between two different systems that don't talk to each other. So us being able to reconcile those systems into a single system of communication was supremely important to us, whilst allowing both parties to continue to use the system they have been using forever, because that's how it feels to everyone. That, I use WhatsApp every single day, I've used WeChat every single day. I don't want to be asked to use anything else. And if I am asked to do something else, my responsiveness and my usability of that new messaging solution is probably going to be a lot lower compared to what I'm going to be doing with WhatsApp or WeChat.
Yeah, no, that. Now I understand your guys' idea. At first, it was I wasn't sure why exactly combine the two apps, but now it makes sense. And that's where the white labeling comes in, right? So you guys are behind the scenes connecting, for example, WeChat to WhatsApp, and then are you guys just connecting them via their own APIs, or how much new software did you guys need to build? Were you able to just kind of use the existing APIs and just sort of forward messages to each platform?
Yes. So this is where the engineering challenges come in. And what was easy to spot right at the beginning is that there are a lot of solutions out there that kind of function very much at the edge of what is within the T's and C's of both platforms. And we were very keen to effectively make sure that everything is within the terms and conditions of APIs, so that this becomes a scalable solution that we can not only apply to ourselves, but also potentially sell to others. So we are, on the WhatsApp side, for instance, we are using the WhatsApp Business API solution, where we effectively help a customer organization set up a WhatsApp Business API account or take advantage of one they already have, and use that as this relaying machine that takes messages from within our backend. We have a user mapping system where the message is mapped to an individual user, and that WhatsApp Business API effectively then acts as a relay machine that delivers the message to an individual user with the little note that this message is coming from Brendan, who's sitting on WeChat, and he has this message to send to you. So it's effectively a way of using the official API account within each service provider, like WhatsApp or WeChat, to create these relay mechanisms that are within the terms and conditions of each platform.
Gotcha. And is there a certain target market that you guys are starting off with? Is it still the tutoree relationship, or are you guys more branching out into any kind of service provider that provides a service over the internet?
Good question. So we had a number of different theories and hypotheses at the very beginning as to how this would work and who would want to buy it. The fundamental, hypothesis was that any interaction which has this marketplace-like buyer-seller interaction, where there is a need for constant and iterative communication between buyer and supplier, where the marketplace wants to maintain some sort of oversight and some sort of control over the communication that is being facilitated. So effectively, our market in the beginning, we thought, was any service marketplace that is connecting a buyer and a seller. But that thinking has evolved a lot over the last 12 months in terms of what are the specific niches we want to go after, where the pain points are sharpest, where they're not particularly sharp, or where we are potentially even competing with marketplaces and their existing in-house solutions, and thereby they would be very unwilling to try this because there's conflicts with their existing, resource investment in putting all their eggs in the app basket by which they are trying to bring everyone to their own app.
Got it. And is there a way to evaluate quickly, say, so you look at a new marketplace industry, you're thinking this might be good for your product. Can you see pretty readily that there's a big divide between what each side of the marketplace is using as far as their messaging app? Is there an easy way? Is it usually pretty easy to tell that? I would think that those would be the biggest opportunities for you guys.
So normally it depends on what the market is, but you can generally take a look at some of the big players in the market and see how they're running their own communication solution.
I see.
Or sometimes they're not running them at all. Sometimes they're very willing to effectively act as an intermediary that introduces both parties to each other, but isn't then in any way responsible for actually delivering communication or facilitating communication between both parties. And that lack of a solution to the communication problem is sometimes itself indicative of there being a problem, because the fact that a marketplace feels unable to facilitate communication because, for instance, it knows it's going to lose them to disintermediation is itself interesting and indicative of there not being a sufficiently good solution to the problem in the first place.
Yeah, right. Some of our interest has actually come from marketplaces that want to connect people up using the same app, but they want oversight of that data and also not to expose their users' personal details to provide a better customer experience. So, for example, if you're booking, a plumber to come around, the plumber and yourself might both be on the same app. It might be both on WhatsApp or might be both on text, but the marketplace that matches you doesn't want you to have each other's personal details, and they want to be able to see all that data in a easy to format way. So we enable that oversight and we enable that connect.
Okay, so yeah, it's like the ideal customer is, like you mentioned, there's kind of this bifurcation between what platforms people are using, but in general, you guys provide an easier way for managing the relationship between customers and service providers in a general sense. And is there part of your application that the user logs into as well, or is it purely like a back end connecting, like you said, white label different messaging platforms, or is there also a UI component?
So the end user, in the sense of provider and customer, they only get to interact with it via the end platforms such as WhatsApp or WeChat or email or any other platform that we integrate with. The end customer, as in the B2B customer, so the organization that is facilitating this communication, they can use this via the existing dashboard, where they can essentially plug their own enterprise systems into it, facilitate communication, launch and trigger conversations, supervise conversations, integrate various AIs to mediate conversation or flag conversations if they are violating certain terms and conditions. We're also developing, and we already have an integration with certain CRMs like HubSpot that effectively allow you to use your CRM as the launch pad from which you can launch conversations between two users. We're trying to remain open at this point as to how the end customer, i.e. the business, is going to be using the platform. But for the end user using the platform and the consumer chat application, we very much want to keep them on the consumer chat application. We do not want to do anything that changes their habits or patterns of behavior, because we believe that we should be going to them rather than asking them to come to us.
Yeah, no, I like that. The idea of really just keeping it native, keeping it what people are used to in their own chat application. And it sounds like you guys are also kind of giving the service provider like a general suite of tools to be able to manage their overall communications with the customer and be able to kind of have more control there, more data, more information, use AI if they want to. And I've always had my own philosophy of casting a wide net. You see what works, and then you double down, triple down what works. And it sounds like you guys are kind of taking that approach, giving many options to the service provider, and then seeing, like you said, keeping an open mind, seeing what works. And I'm assuming you guys from there would put more time and effort into that item.
Fingers crossed.
Right. And yeah, I guess do you guys have like a mentor, someone that brought you into this industry? I know you guys are kind of your own mentors because you said you learned from your past workings on your previous startup, but is there someone that, kind of showed you the ropes anywhere along the way?
I guess we've had a few, so it's not been just one individual. It's been different people at different points of our journey. We had two excellent mentors that come to mind for the last startup that didn't work out. One was our lead investor, first investor, and the founder of a company called Twinkle, which is a large education publishing group in the UK, and also the co-founder of a language learning app called Memrise. So the two of them really helped us with our initial understanding of how to build a innovative company, how to validate a product, how to think about people management. And then we should also mention Hussein, Hussein Kazai, who's a co-founder of Onfido, our current lead investor, who's also been a mentor for quite a while. He also invested in our last startup. He has been excellent at guiding us from beginning to where we are now in terms of customer validation, sales, investment, everything.
I think it's fair to say that the best mentors we have had have generally been other founders, people who've been on the journey themselves and have I think it's fair to say for all of them, a pretty profound understanding of how to get from 0 to 1, which very often is the hardest thing to do for a company.
Yeah.
I think they also have a lot of empathy. That's a very important characteristic, I think, for a good mentor, which is not just to have a kind of abstract and rational understanding of a problem, but also to understand how difficult sometimes it is to make a change within your business and how unable you are to control everything. There are so many things that are unknown unknowns in what you're doing, and there are so many things that you cannot control or that very often are subject to just good luck or bad luck or timing. And having people who have an appreciation of that is important for you to keep sane in all of this as you're trying to navigate the pressure of 1, starting a company, 2, making money, 3, often fundraising, and that in itself also often brings its own set of challenges with regards to the expectations you're set for what does success look like for the company that you're building.
Yeah, no, there are so many pitfalls that you can run into starting a startup, and to have someone that can point those out for you, I mean, it could save you, a year or more of your life. So it really does make a huge difference to have a mentor that's been through those pitfalls and shows you those ways, the ways around them. Yeah, I think that what you're hinting at with the empathy is maybe that since there are so many pitfalls, you want an investor that understands that maybe they're also a founder, and so that when you run into very tough times, they're empathetic and realize that just because it's gotten tough doesn't mean that it's over. That's just sort of part of the startup process. So yeah, you guys are based out of London. What's it been like starting a startup out of London? And I don't know if you have much to compare it to. I don't know if you've started anything in a different city, but yeah, what's it been like?
I would say I'm very bullish on London. It's a fantastic place to start a company. The breadth of talent is amazing. The capital markets by European standards are pretty deep and pretty liquid. So I think as far as Europe is concerned, this is definitely the best, certainly one of the best, if not the best place to be. And I can't really conceive of doing it anywhere else. Obviously, the US is always a temptation because you get told constantly that you should be in SF or the Valley in order to raise money more easily or to tap for best talent. But the breadth of talent available here in Europe is fantastic in its own right. And as far as we are concerned with a new company as well, given that we are building essentially a messaging solution or a message orchestration system that is predominantly focused on consumer chat applications that are not necessarily hugely popular in the US, i.e., for instance, WhatsApp, where the predominant market is really Europe, Latin America, South Asia. We found that the developers we've been working with and people we've hired have generally not come from the US. They've been coming from Latin America, North Africa, India, Europe, because that's where you find people who have most experience of building on top of WhatsApp Business API and the greatest and most profound understanding of the various different cases of how consumer chat applications can be integrated into daily life and daily workflows in a way that is not necessarily as easy to grasp for the US market, where WhatsApp is really a secondary communication solution.
I kind of run into a similar question, which is I live in the New York City area. Even myself, I wonder, do I have to move out to Silicon Valley in order to start a startup? But I mean, if everyone's moving out there, I mean, I can always visit there and I can make connections and with investors. But I do feel like there's a unique advantage to staying where I am. New York South, just like London, obviously is still a big hub. And to be able to, in my case, meet firsthand the dentists that are in the New York area, that gives me a unique advantage to this region. And likewise with you guys, with providers, service providers in the London area. I actually spoke to a previous VC on my podcast who helps East Asian companies expand to Europe and the US. And he was saying that it's essential to have, if you want to expand to another country, to have people native to that country running the operations there, because there's so many things that you just don't realize the nuances about that culture, that region. So, I mean, if you wanted to start a company in the US and have it do well in London, that'd be probably pretty tough. So I think it makes sense to be there on the ground.
You want to be where your customers are. And
right, exactly.
Customers are not necessarily in the US. So it's as far as this company is concerned, we probably shouldn't be in the US either.
Yeah. What would you say are some of the biggest challenges that you guys have faced so far? Obviously, the startup life, it's all challenges, but what would you say are the biggest ones that have been the toughest to overcome?
Saul, do you want to kick this one off?
Yeah, I guess SaaS is new to Wojtek and I. We've built a B2B business before. We've built a B2C business, but we haven't really done SaaS. So it's been a kind of steep learning curve in terms of sales cycles and go to market and what customers look for in a good SaaS product. So really understanding that it's been a challenge, and that's meant some product pivots, some product alterations, some customers we work closely with who then dropped out, like the typical stuff that happens when you build a SaaS product. It's been pretty challenging. I mean, raising investments always, it's always a hurdle. I'm always both a sprint and a marathon, but we got through that earlier this year, but that was very challenging, and rightly so, because you have to really demonstrate that what you're building is special. I think that's the main ones for me. Wojtek, did you have any to add?
Yeah, I think the main challenge for us, as far as I can see, is picking a direction. So you've asked at the very beginning about use cases and GTM, and in a sense, this is something that we do most while thinking about, which is there are 2-3 billion people who use WhatsApp every single day. There is another billion who use WeChat. There is billions who use email. There are billions who use other consumer chat applications. Building on top of consumer chat applications is in itself not a niche. It is very much as broad of a market as you can possibly conceive of and imagine. So picking a direction and actually finding a very specific problem that you can solve as a SaaS product has been probably our number one challenge. And even at this point, and we're about 12 months, just a little more than 12 months in, we probably still have, within the confines of a single business, we realistically have about 2 or 3 projects that are running concurrently. And I can imagine any one of them might become the main, would be responsible for the main thrust of a business progressing over the next 12 to 24 months. But we don't have clarity yet as to which one of those it is going to be. And obviously the stakes are high, because if you pick the wrong one, you might lose the company. You might not make enough money to make it to profitability, revenue generation, raising money again, if that's what you need to do. And also knowing what good and bad looks like is tricky, because you're not only evaluating option A, B, and C, or evaluating option A, B, and C against one another. So even if you are starting to generate revenue and seeing progress and traction with a particular line of product, that is not necessarily the strongest indication that you've made the best choice, because you're trying to at the same time establish as to whether actually B or C had been a better option in a counterfactual, which is a difficult thing to establish in itself.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is true. It's so hard to do that balancing act between you want to diversify enough, try enough different things where one of them ends up taking off, but you also don't want to spread yourself too thin and use too many resources. So, yeah, one of the most important things is doing those experiments, comparing them to each other, and I guess ideally keeping them as lightweight as possible so that you don't use so many resources and you still are able to do all those experiments and find out. And then once you know one is good to go, then you can pour more resources into it. Yeah, so that's definitely one of the challenging points. And Saul, you mentioned about retaining people in a B2B sense. I know I'm also in the B2B area, and I've found just something that you guys may want to look into, and maybe you already have, but Facebook groups. And I tell everyone this: you go to a certain niche. If you guys have tutoring, go to tutoring Facebook groups, or maybe some software that exists already, and there's a support group on Facebook for it. There's so many people there that are open to ideas, they're complaining about the software that they're currently using. They're people that like to give feedback, and so they're very good for testing out products. So I've had a lot of luck finding dentists and perhaps administrators there, and maybe it could be good for you guys as well.
Yep, agreed. I think that's a super, super valuable piece of advice, and ironically, this chimes very well with our previous business and previous company, where we are trying to leverage exactly that, which is niche, specific communities that are built around a particular interest, profession, state, location, geography, etc. You find a lot of wisdom there that is very difficult to find elsewhere, and that concentration is very difficult to replicate. So being able to access those types of groups is enormously valuable as a business.
Yeah, it makes a world of difference what type of group of people you're talking to. I mean, it can't be underemphasized that if you talk to one group, they may not want to help. They may know the information, but they may not want to help, or they may want to help, but they may not have the expertise. But if you find that right group, like one of these Facebook groups that have the expertise, they're all vocal, then it really is golden. Last question: What's some of the most valuable insights you would pass on to someone else starting a company, so that they could save themselves a lot of time and not waste years of their life, that kind of thing, that really gives them a chance to avoid the pitfalls?
I would say don't overthink.
Yeah.
The most successful investors and founders that have put money into what we're building over the years, I really doubt any of them thought that deeply about what they were doing. No offense to them, but we know that they had a product they thought would be useful. They tested it out, and then they started to scale from there. But people who you're bombarded with never-ending formulas and GTM strategies and everything else, and I see a lot of founders get caught up in that and never really begin because they're constantly trying to build the foundations. Just don't overthink it. Just try it out, and if it works, it works.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, because if you don't get started, then you don't get that real time data and feedback to know, okay, maybe there's a lot of frameworks out there, but how about my specific problem? How does it work? What are the physics of it? What are the fundamentals of it? And you won't find that out unless you start. So definitely agree with that.
And on my side, I would just add, however long you think it's going to take, it's probably going to take twice as long.
Yeah.
So whatever plans you're making, as a rule of thumb, as a heuristic, just double it, because everything takes a bit longer and everything is a bit more difficult than you initially imagine.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely true. There's always, no matter what you do, it's always going to take longer. That's been my experience. I know that's been most people's experience when trying to start a company. So, but yeah, It's been a pleasure talking with you both. Good luck with Jely. I know you guys are definitely great marketers. I know your story just by looking at LinkedIn. It's clear to me what's going on. So I hope that keeps going and you guys can get some good support from the providers and the customers.
Brilliant. Thank you for having us, Brendan.